The third management style out of 5 that we're doing is the consultative style. So we're right in the middle. And that's kind of good to think about because it's going to balance a lot of the things we know about our conduct sort of variables. So in terms of communication, we got one way and two way. Well, consultative is two way, but it's kind of one way as well. What do we mean by that? We mean the manager will seek the input of team members and allow for them to provide feedback when making decisions. So it's two-way communication. In terms of the orientation, we're going to have a nice balance between being task-focused and people-focused. So the manager puts a high importance on achieving goals, which is task-focused, but they balance that with a concern for people, which is people-focused. In terms of how do we motivate, we're going to balance using extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. So extrinsic is where the manager motivates with rewards and punishments. You do a good job, you're rewarded. You do a bad job, you're punished. But they also balance that with opportunities for self-fulfillment by the team. That's called intrinsic. What does that mean? It means you motivate by encouraging people to get better and improve themselves. So we're going to use a balance. Decision makings, we're going to say centralized, and we had centralized decision at one end of the spectrum and decentralized at the other. We're still going to say centralized, but it's a little bit nuanced. What do we mean? We mean that the manager does get team member input, because we set up here they use two-way communication. So we're going to get team member input for decisions, but ultimately the manager still makes the final decision. However, it's based on the input of the team. So it's like you get, as an employee, get to have a say, but the manager retains the right to make the final decision. What about the authority? Well, we are going to use some delegation here. The manager does delegate some of the less important tasks, but ultimately still maintains a pretty high level of authority. So you're going to delegate a lot of things to employees, but none of the really, really important stuff. That will probably stay with the manager. And lastly, control. The manager likes to have some control. So they maintain some control over team members' daily activities. However, not like autocratic and persuasive where we're always going, what are you doing, how are you doing it, show me it. You allow employees to have a bit of control over how they do things. So if we could summarize a consultative style with a manager through our conduct variables, here's what they'd say to employees. They'd say, how do you think we should do this? What's the best way? So that's two-way communication. The orientation is we need to get this job done by 5 p.m. to achieve your target, but is that reasonable for you? Is there maybe another time that we could sort of look at getting that done if it's not reasonable? How are you motivating? The manager says, if you get it done, there's a $100 bonus. But you know what? You should also think of this as a good opportunity for your career. So extrinsic motivation with the money, intrinsic motivation with the opportunities to improve your career. Decisions. This is probably the easiest one, or sorry, the one that would help you remember this the easiest, this style. The manager would say, I'm going to ask you what you think the decision should be, take it on board, and then I'm going to make the decision. So let's say there's 10 people in the team. I'm going to ask all 10 of you what you think. I'm going to weigh that up, and then I'm going to come up with the best decision. Authority, the manager says, I'll do most of the important tasks. But look, there are some I need you to do, and I will let you do. And with control, the manager says, I'll let you figure out when and how to do it, but ultimately it does have to be done by this date, so let me know when you're finished. How could we see this style, or when will we use it? I guess we'd say where employees are a bit more experienced or skilled because they have valuable insights, so we'd ask them for their opinion. We'd use it when employees require some direction, but are a little bit motivated. We could use it when employees have valuable insights. So if employees have insights on the best way a job should be done, you should use consultative because you're going to get their opinion. And likewise, the team members must be capable of leadership. If they're not, then this style is probably not appropriate. It is good for when more complex decisions must be made requiring insights and buy-in from team members. You need them to buy into the final decision. So some ways we could see this are, so let's take the construction jobs. Construction work and trade jobs are dangerous. There's no way around it. So you want someone to follow instructions. However, like if this guy's the manager of the plumbing business and these guys work for him, well, he's not going to be watching them do every single job every single day. He trusts them. He's trained them up. He's shown them the right way to do things. He'll ask them for what they think, but ultimately it'll be his final decision because things need to be done safely, likewise on a construction site. I think the best example of consultative when you're a student is your teacher. Your teacher might say, what is the best way for our class to revise for this SAC? So you're getting a lot of input from the class, but ultimately the students don't get to make the decision. It's the teacher who makes the decision, but they get your input and they sort of say, yeah, look, based on what your feedback is, here is what we're going to do. Lastly, we've got to read what are the advantages and disadvantages. Well, there's a lot of good things about advantages about consultative, but we'll sum it up as this: we're going to start to get better decisions. Why? Because we're getting feedback from team members who have insights the manager may not see. So insights from the ground floor. So the manager can't always see everything that's going on because they're locked away, say, in their office. Well, this one gets insights from the people who are on the ground floor. We're going to get better employee motivation because team members feel motivated as their input and feedback is sought. It is good or effective for creative tasks, and that's required when the task is complex and not repetitive or following procedures. So you're not just operating a bit of machinery. The job is a bit of thoughts required. Well, this is a good style for that because it seeks input and encourages creativity. And it leads to greater decision acceptance. Employees are more committed to decisions for which they provided input. What are the disadvantages? Well, employees may not be aware of complexity. What do we mean by that? We mean you're going to get team member feedback, but they don't know everything. They just see their little part of what they do within the business. So they might actually get asked to make decisions but beyond their sort of capabilities or their role, and they're not aware of the complexity that goes into it. It's very time consuming. Now decisions like we did with autocratic and persuasive, that was just the manager making the decision. And that was quick. But consultative decisions will take longer as employees are consulted for their input. That will take longer and more time. We can say, look, there's a little bit more motivation over here, but overall pretty low sometimes because when team members, they get asked their opinion, but then ultimately their feedback might be ignored because the manager's going to have the final say. So employers might go, well, what'd you ask me for then? I'm not motivated. I'm not going to give you any more feedback. If you're going to ask me for what I think and then ignore it, I'm not motivated to work here and I'm not going to participate anymore. And lastly, it can create conflict between team members. Because the manager is using the input of some employees in their decision, that means they've ignored the input of others. And that might create resentment and feuds between employees. Some feel like the manager listens to other people, but not to them.